Congressman McGovern. I don't want to make this a bouquet tossing contest, but it has been great to work with you. Your leadership on this issue has been extraordinary. And I also want to note the fact that particularly we Westerners, and I see my friend Congressman Woolsey here, also got a chance to serve with Congressman Burton. We Westerners, particularly when we think of human rights, we think of Tom Lantos. Tom Lantos again and again stood up for human rights, and as Congressman Burton knows, he always wanted to work across the aisle on these issues with you, with Congressman Wolf. It seems that when there were important human rights causes, Tom Lantos was a force for bringing Democrats and Republicans together. That's what I want to see if I can help do this afternoon, just for a few minutes, because I don't think it's a Democratic or Republican issue. I think this is something that is a moral challenge, and we've got to find a way to make real progress. The root causes of the great unrest in Bahrain, in my view, are unaddressed and unresolved. And we've essentially seen these last 17 months, and the back and forth has continued. Congressman McGovern notes the tear gassing, most recently. We've got to have a political solution here. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take a political solution, all sides coming together. Now, in November of last year, the King took a very significant step, setting up the Bahrain Commission, the Bahrain Commission of Independent Inquiry. It certainly wasn't perfect. It was limited in scope, but at least it resulted in a number of recommendations. So when I take stock of those recommendations, because I think it's important, when you see an important inquiry like that, to take a look at the recommendations, when you add it all up in response to the recommendations, you see mostly foot dragging. I mean, you can have a debate about whether there was a little more of this or a little more of that, but what the result has been is frustration and this downward spiral of back and forth violence, and you've got protesters and the police, and back and forth it goes. And certainly there's been some targeting of children. The jailing of Nabil Rajib, the president of the Bahrain Center for Human Rights, concerned me greatly, because it seemed to me that he faced these kinds of sanctions simply for criticizing the Bahraini government on Twitter. I mean, he basically got criticized for speaking out. And it underscores what Human Rights Watch, in my view, rightfully consider an escalating trend of attempting to silence the dissidents and members of civil society groups. Now, the report explicitly recommended that the government of Bahrain review convictions, commute sentences, and drop outstanding charges against all persons charged with offenses involving nonviolent political expression. Again, if you look at what the response has been, and I think we've got to do that as we try to find a way to a solution here, what you've seen are the continuance of the arrest, the imprisoning of Bahraini citizens for expressing political views the government doesn't agree with. And the response of our government, in my judgment, has been to some extent to reward bad behavior, with the arms sales. And to me, to systematically, to reward regimes that systematically and oftentimes violently repress democratic demands, I think is a mistake. And I understand that certainly a significant number, not all of the items being sold to the Bahrainis are for external defense capabilities and not, crowd control. But my concern is what the message sends to the wider region and the world at large when our country, who we all here in this room revere for our values, and again, it's not Democrats, not Republicans, it's our reverence for our values. What does it say when democratic aspirations are crushed and these peaceful activists get repeatedly hauled off to jail? And in my view, it was not helpful when one of the recipients of those items was the Bahraini Defense Force, a government entity that was implicated in the deaths of unarmed protesters by, again, the independent report. So as a party to the international covenants on civil and political rights, the government of Bahrain is obligated to protect the right of all to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. And with that, there has also been an obligation to abide by the United Nations basic principles on the use of force and firearms. And that, as you all know, requires that law enforcement officers use force only to the extent necessary to achieve lawful purposes, and wherever possible, only after there's been a warning that it is about to be used. Again, based on the evidence that we've picked up, there has not exactly been impressive compliance with those particular rules. That's not, in my view, progress. Now, compounding this, the government of Bahrain recently moved to deny all requests, as we understand it, for permits for peaceful protests, and that this has essentially been the policy since the end of June. This includes not allowing opposition groups to peacefully assemble in any part of the country. And certainly this, in my view, runs counterproductive and runs the risk that Bahrainis who we want to be part of this solution, to be part of this reform process where people come together, are going to be even more alienated, and you turn the moderates into the extremists who are going to be the biggest challenge at any kind of solution. So obviously the clock is ticking here. Time's running out for finding a way to bring people together. And I just want to close with a couple of points in terms of using all our levers, all of the possible levers for influence with the Bahrainis. Now, I chair over in the Senate, on the Senate Finance Committee, the Subcommittee on International Trade and Competitiveness. And I have consistently supported every opportunity when I was over here in the House and in the Senate to try to expand trade. And just recently, with Chairman Baucus tied up with the Super Committee, managed a significant part of the 3 free trade agreements. So I've always felt that expanded trade can be a great force for progress. It is one of the tools for real social progress and improving the quality of life of people. But free trade cannot mean trade free from honoring commitments. And I'm concerned that Bahrain's labor commitments pursuant to the U.S.-Bahrain Free Trade Agreement have not been fully implemented. There's evidence that the government denied public sector workers the right to organize, trade union leaders arrested, harassed, prosecuted, and intimidated. In addition, more than 2,800 workers were dismissed or suspended during the uprisings last year, and that affected more than 14,000 family members. Now, called out for the actions it took against these workers, the government has said that it hired many of the workers back. We can't find as much detail on this as we would like, but it seems that many of the workers were reassigned to lower paying jobs, or jobs that in effect didn't match their skills, didn't put them where they could fully contribute to the economy, and often were forced to sign loyalty oaths. So the actions of the Bahraini government have been concerning in my view, because I think the evidence I've cited deals with the ongoing violation of human rights of Bahrainis. And if that continues, I think what we'll see is something that every member of Congress is not going to like, and that is a Bahrain that is more fractured and a Bahrain that is less stable. And so if we continue to say we're with the regime, we're going to have these arms sales and the like, my concern is that this increases the risk of turning a population that has been friendly to the U.S. military presence on the island against us. So I think I would just wrap it up in the spirit of Congressman Burton's remarks, is we just got to stay at it until we find a solution to this, a political solution. And I just want to make it clear to colleagues on both sides of the aisle, I'm interested in working in both a bipartisan and a bicameral kind of fashion in order to achieve that. And again, to Congressman McGovern, it's been great to team up with you, and really grateful for your leadership.